Welcome to today's lecture, which is on Dr. Ranganathan's ideas about the notational plane. I am Mustafa Zaidi. I have been a teacher of library science for over 3 decades in the Aligarh University, and apart from that I have also worked in some libraries. As we have discussed in our previous lectures, Dr. Ranganathan was the person who made library science a theory based discipline. Before that, library science used to be library practice, that whatever we used to do in the library, that we sought to justify through ex post facto. Now, Dr. Ranganathan, ever since he became librarian about 100 years back, he tried to provide some theoretical basis for the practices which are followed in libraries. And one of the most important practices which are followed in libraries is the arrangement of books on the shelves of a library. These books have to be arranged in a logical sequence, so that the user who is coming to the library is able to get the subject or topic of his or her choice with minimum wastage of time. For that, librarians have devised what are known as classification schemes. That means schemes which arrange knowledge in a particular sequence. Now, this arrangement of knowledge differs from philosopher to philosopher and from person to person. So, there had to be some kind of standardization which would help all librarians working all over the world to decide on what sequence they would like to follow. One of the systems which was devised was devised by Melville Dewey, an American librarian, whose system is the most prevalent in India today, that is known as the Dewey Decimal Classification System. Dr. Ranganathan, when he arrived on the scene in the Madras University Library, he then devised through his experiences another scheme of classification that he started calling the colon classification. And then he worked on how to decide what subject should come first, what subject should come later, and once you have decided on a sequence, how to fix that sequence so that everyone remembers where books or topics of his or her choice are placed. So, Dr. Ranganathan came up with an elaborate idea, and that elaborate idea was that the work of classification is divided into 3 parts. We have already discussed these 3 parts, but let us just quickly run through them. He said that the work is divided into 3 parts. The first one he called idea plane, the second one he called the verbal plane, and the third one that we are discussing today is the notational plane. Now, the idea plane, this is the basic theoretical arrangement of subjects and their parts and their sequencing. After that sequencing is done, we decide on what terms to use, and we have already discussed what terms to use to describe various combinations of subjects. Then comes the last part, and certainly not the easiest part. It is one of the most difficult things that we have. It is how to mechanize this arrangement. In a previous discussion, we have talked about the fact that Melville Dewey introduced what is known as the decimal system. Decimal system of notation. The decimal system means that all the numbers that you see written on the spines of books, they are not whole numbers, meaning they are not whole numbers in the sense that 2 is equal to 1 plus 1. They are in fact 0.2, and 0.2 cannot equal 0.1 plus 0.1. This idea we have discussed earlier also. The idea was that if you have, for example, divided agriculture into wheat, rice and so on, and then divided it into wheat harvesting and rice harvesting, and you have given them the symbol 1 to agriculture, 2 to wheat, 3 to harvesting, 4 to rice and 5 to harvesting of rice, and you then get a book which deals not with harvesting of wheat or harvesting of rice or harvesting of all other crops, but deals generally with harvesting. Meaning harvesting of all crops or harvesting in a theoretical concept. Then where do you keep this book? You have already assigned 1 to agriculture in general, 2 to wheat agriculture, 3 to harvesting of wheat, 4 to rice agriculture, 5 to harvesting of rice. Now, where will this general concept of harvesting come? Does it come after all of that? But that would be against the manner in which we look for subjects, or where do we keep it? We can't keep it here. Dewey's genius was that he said that let this be point 1. As soon as this is point 1, then anything between point 1 and point 2 can be interpolated or can be kept by using the symbol 0.11 or 0.101 or whatever you want to do. So, there is infinite possibility of any new subjects which arise between the general concept of agriculture and the general concept of harvesting to be kept between the two, no matter what symbols you are using. This we can do at the theoretical level, at the idea plane level, but this was nearly impossible at the notational plane level, because we were dealing with numbers as whole numbers, as quantitative numbers. Decimal numbering changed this, and we can interpolate or we can insert new subjects as and when they arise at whatever position is best suited for them. So, this was a important step in the development of arrangement of books on the shelves of a library. After Dewey had made this the concept of notation to be a decimal system, then came along Dr. Ranganathan. Dr. Ranganathan came out with two innovations. One was that we should have what was known as or what later became known as faceted notation. This concept had earlier been introduced in the UDC, but it was not known as faceted notation, it was known as partite notation. And he also extensively used what we now know as mixed notation. Now, this requires a little bit of explanation. What is mixed notation? We use the Indo-Arabic numerals, that is 0 to 9, this we have already discussed. We can also use capital A to capital Z, and we can also use small a to small z. Now, all of these symbols that we are using, they have a definite ordinal sequence. Ordinal meaning we know that, for example, if we have 3, then 3 will be preceded by 2 and shall be followed by 4. If we have C, then we know that C will be followed by D and C will be preceded by B. But what happens if you have a symbol 2 and you have a symbol B, then which one of these will go first? Meaning what will be the ordinal sequence between systems of notations which are of different species or which are of different types. Now, this created a difficulty, and this requires some kind of an arbitrary decision or some kinds of a subjective decision. This is something that we have to remember. Dr. Ranganathan in his theory said that what we should do is that we should keep first of all we should keep the alphabets, we call them the Roman smalls, Roman smalls mean small a to small z. This should be followed by the Indo-Arabic numerals. What are the Indo-Arabic numerals? 0 to 9, and this should be followed by the Roman capitals, that is capital A to capital Z. So, that means that since the number of subjects that we have to represent are quite large, therefore, usage of this increases the capacity of our notational system to sequence concepts. But there is a problem if you look at the typewriter keys. Small o, small l and a small I are similar to 0, 1. Small o, small l and small I on the typewriter may look like O, may look like 0 and 1. Similarly, among the capitals, capital O and I, capital I, capital O and capital I, they are also on the typewriter or on the keyboard will look similar to this. So, one of them will have to be used and the other two will have to be sacrificed. So, this is one of the adjustments that we have to make whenever we are using what we call mixed notation, that some symbols have to be sacrificed, so that there is no confusion at the time of arrangement of books on the shelves of the library. Now, by doing this, what we are doing is that we have increased the capacity of the notational system. The second thing that faceted notation does is, mixed notation increases the capacity, faceted notation also increases the capacity, because one thing which has been studied by librarians and which many librarians have, they have used psychological studies also about how much does the eye grasp and how much remains in your mind, that the optimal number which people can remember easily is between 3 digits to 6 digits. And that is why, if you recall, when we had these old style telephone numbers, we had 6 to 7 digits in each one. Now, we have mobile numbers which are 10 digits. So, whenever you write a 10 digit number, for example, if you write 9 4 3 2 5 9 6 2 4 1, this number you will find difficulty in remembering and writing. So, what do we do generally? We say 9 4 3 2 and then we say 2 5 9 6. I am sorry, I have repeated the 2 again. This is what happens. So, you have 5 9 6 and 2 4 1. Just by putting in a blank space here, this numbers becomes easily transcribable, and in a library you know that you have to carry one number from one place to another place if you are looking for a book. So, that is why this was put into practice by various librarians, that they started using gaps between numbers, so that you could recall the number easily. Then the universal decimal classification, the UDC that I have talked about, they started using other symbols also. They started using what we call the punctuation marks. The punctuation symbols, you can say. What are the punctuation symbols? The punctuation symbols are full stop, comma, semicolon, colon, inverted comma, double inverted commas, brackets, and so on. So, these numbers are being used, these symbols are being used in between these numbers, so that it becomes more easily transcribable and more easily rememberable. But the problem is that if you have, let us say, 3 4 comma 2 and you have 3 4 semicolon 2, and you have 3 for inverted comma 2. Then which one of these will be placed first, which will come second, which will come third. This also then becomes a purposive decision, which one is to come first, which one is to come second, which one is to come third. So, this increases the complexity of the class number, but this increases the expressibility of the class number. That means that each subject and its subdivisions or its subtopics can be kept separately on the shelves of a library. And if you are using a computerized system, then also each one of these symbols, they represent a concept. So, that concept can be independently searchable. You have a string of 5 words, and these 5 words, if they represent a symbol, if they are represented by this symbol, another word is represented by this symbol, and a third word is represented by, let us say, the symbol 5, then you can combine all of them together, because these symbols tell you what type of words they are, whether they are main words or whether they are subordinate words. Let me give you another example of what I am talking about. You have a book which is Geography of India, and you have Indian education system. Now, here India is the main focus here. Here, what is the main focus? Main focus is education. Education system which has a variety which is known as the Indian education system. Here the subject itself is geography, meaning India is being, the focus of geography is on India. Now, if this is represented of, or if this is represented by, let us say, 4, and this 4 is preceded by a dot, and dot means that this means space, and for India also, here also we are using 4, but before this, let us say we have put a comma. Then India is being represented by the same concept, but this symbol tells us in what context India is being used. Here India is a variety of the education system. Here in geography is India is the main concept of study in geography. I hope you have been able to understand what I am trying to say. What I am trying to say is that these symbols add to the meaning that we ascribe to the other symbols, because they typify a particular kind of approach. So, this was an innovation which was made by librarians, which was developed further in the universal decimal classification, and Dr. Ranganathan subsequently developed them much more in detail. So, to overcome some of the problems that we have already discussed earlier, one of the problems that we faced for using natural language was the prevalence of synonyms. And the problem of homonyms. You already know what synonyms are, 2 words which mean the same thing, and homonyms, 1 word which has many different meanings. Now, this happens in natural language. That is why we are representing natural language terms by symbols. Now, these symbols should not inherit these problems that already exist in natural language. Synonym means 2 words same meaning. A synonymous or synonyms in notation will mean in language. two words with the same meaning are known as synonyms. In the notational system, two symbols representing the same concept will mean that you have got a synonymous number. We will take the example of India. India we can represent by 5. If we use 5 to represent India, then whenever the concept of India is used, we should always represent it by 5. What should not happen is that India is represented by 5 at one place and it is represented by 6 at another place and is represented by 7 at another place. Why? Because then it will mean that we have created synonymous numbers. If you are looking for books on India, a particular aspect of India, then the number for India should consistently be the same. It should not be different. Let us take an example. Sociology of sociological studies in India. So, we should have one or two symbols representing sociology. Let us say that is Y. Then India would, this is not sociological studies of Indians, this is sociological studies in India. Now, this according to the colon classification means sociological studies which have been carried out in India. If we have a similar title, sociological studies of Indians, then this still represents India, but here it represents Indians and here it represents India, but the symbol combination that we have used is the same. This is what the canon of synonym means, that you whenever the same concept reoccurs in a class number or you use the same concept in a number of different contexts, then as far as possible the notation that you use, meaning the symbols that you are giving, should be the same across all those places, so that unnecessary synonyms are not created. Here it is sociological studies of India, meaning Indians are the focus study and the studies can be carried out by Europeans, it can be carried out by Americans, it can be carried out by Africans, anybody can carry out sociological studies of Indians. This number on the other hand represents sociological studies in India that have been done in India. Now, these studies may be studies which focus on people in UK or Germany or France or USA and so on, but this is different and this is different. So, I hope you understand this, that no concept should be represented by two symbols as far as possible. Ranganathan said that the symbols or the notation representing a subject or isolate in a group of subjects or isolates should be unique. Now, let us come to the second problem. What the second problem is what? That one word may mean many different things. What does that mean? That means a class number should represent a homonym. To remind you, is one word many meanings. Therefore, a homonymous in notation, this is language, Homonyms in language mean one word which have many different meanings. I have earlier given examples of the word cotton. Cotton, for example, can mean the plant as well as the fabric. In notation, one symbol may have many different meanings. Meaning, for example, if you use 5 and say this represents science and technology, then if you have a book which deals with science only, you will still keep it in 5. A book which deals with technology, that also you will keep in 5. But so that means 5 will accommodate general books on science, general books on technology, as well as books which deal with both science and technology together. That means this number is representing more than one concept. This number is not representing only one concept. What homonyms mean, or what the canon of homonym tries to achieve, is that each symbol, each class number, or each isolate number in a system of class numbers, or each isolate number in a system of isolate numbers should represent only one isolate or only one subject, as the case may be. This is how Ranganathan has described it. So, one of the major problems of natural language, that it abounds with synonyms, it abounds with homonyms, has to be solved by following the canon of synonyms and the canon of we have already discussed how Dr. Ranganathan called all the rules that he made canons. He called them canons because canon, the word canon has a religious significance, and normally religious rules are not to be breached, are not to be violated. So, he gave us these two canons and he called them the compulsory canons of notation. These are compulsory canons of notation. Compulsory meaning that despite the word canon here, he further emphasized their importance by calling them compulsory canons. For the idea plane, Dr. Ranganathan gave us 12 canons. These two are the compulsory canons, and there are 5 alternate canons, making a total of 10. So, we have 2 canons which are compulsory, which have to be followed, plus there are 10 canons which are not compulsory, which give you alternate systems which tell you you can use this or you can use that, and both of them can be used depending upon the fact that you use them consistently and you do not change them. So, in the notational system, Ranganathan gave 12 basic canons, then he gave certain canons for mnemonics and certain canons for hospitality. All of these canons we are going to discuss in future lectures and future discussions. I hope you have understood the concept of why it is important that a notational system should not repeat the problems that we encounter in the normal natural everyday language, and why it is important that the notational system should be free from synonyms and homonyms. Thank you.